Hello, and welcome to the Heart of Destiny 2. Range. You might know about range. Damage fall off. Minimum range, maximum range. What do those mean? First, we're going to go over what that means because you may not know what that means. I have it up on the screen right here. Minimum range, optimal range, drop-off start. This is the distance that the damage fall-off starts. Before this point, you will be dealing maximum damage. After, you're not going to be dealing maximum damage. You are going to be on a downward curve toward the floor. And the floor, the point where it hits the floor, is the maximum range. It's the damage floor or the minimum damage. I know Cool Guy, for example, often calls it damage floor, I think. It's pretty common. A new word, which you may have heard of maximum range, you may have heard of minimum range. They use that in the Call of Duty communities. That's where I get the terms from, but you're not likely aware of value per point. It's a fairly simple term. It's a pretty broad term. You could use this for basically anything, just a value of a point of something. And for this, the value is the value of the point of range stat. So the measurement of how much damage drop off, improvement of range or damage drop off a weapon gets from each point of range stat. Zoom does increase the benefit of the range points. Zoom tiers. So this is why I had to update my range charts. I figured out how zoom tiers work. I didn't know. What I was using for zoom beforehand was the system that most people had seemingly discovered about zoom. There was a guy in Destiny 1, I forget his name. I'd like to pull up his name. Maybe I'll put his name in the video as text. But he had kind of figured out the zoom system, which unfortunately is wrong. I'm sorry to break it to you, but that system never really worked. I could never really get it to actually, there was always something off. There was always something, it made sense, but it just didn't 100% work. But now, the system I figured out works a lot better. It's simpler, better. I had to redo the range formula that I use for calculating range, that use these range calculators use for calculating the range, but it works much better and it's much more simple. Let's actually go to that while we're talking about. Let's just run over to there. The range formula. In case you care, you may not care, but the full range formula right now, the new one. So it's basically based on purely on hipfire. The range stat affects your hipfire. Your hipfire is then affected by the zoom. More range will improve your hipfire and will then improve your ADS, because the zoom of the ADS will then increase that as well. This is different than what I had before, because I had a value per point for range for hipfire and for ADS. Now I only have one for hipfire. The ADS one I show, but it really is just the hipfire one multiplied by the aim down sight's zoom factor. So really it's not really anything other than just an equation. So range equals the tested range. So basically any tested range. I've actually reduced that to the lowest range possible for the game. So if you had 0 range, this is the number, that's the number I'd be using here, is actually the number that is absolute 0 range stat. So then you add the range stat minus the tested stat, which in this case is 0 because the tested range is 0. So that is actually deleted off, times hipfire value per point. So fairly simple, times the hipfire VPP. Then we go down to the ADS version. Same thing, except we have this portion here, base zoom plus scope zoom. So as opposed to before, the system that was assumed beforehand was that scope zoom acted like a perk multiplier. It was a multiplier of the weapon's range. I guess that's what I assumed, because it was scope zoom, seemingly a multiplier of the base zoom. Unfortunately, it's actually not a multiplier of the base zoom. It is an additive to the base zoom. So you have a 14 tier base zoom and you have a 4 tier scope zoom. You just add them and you get 18, right? Same thing here. You just derive the zoom range multipliers, which I have here, and the tiers are fairly simple because they're literally just 1/10 of what the tier is. So you get base zoom plus scope zoom. So that's the big difference here. Is before I would have multiplied the whole thing by the base zoom and then multiplied the whole thing by the scope zoom. Now I'm adding them together first. The perk multiplier is separate. Rangefinder does use the old that multiplier system that was beforehand. Same with ricochet rounds. Unfortunately doesn't do that anymore, but Seraph rounds does have the same effect that ricochet rounds does. So rangefinder and ricochet rounds and opening shot and etc. will have this perk multiplier effect that is a multiplier on top of everything, unlike scope tiers which are added to the base zoom. So that's the big difference in the formula here, is that your tiers are just added. So that makes things really simple, because now you can look in dim at your zoom tier, and that's basically your zoom. You can easily derive that zoom. That's your zoom, 18. So an 18 zoom would be 1.775 multiplier. Easy peasy. We can go to the range calculator here, and as you can see, if I put in a, what was that up here? I think it was Gallard. So if we take an auto rifle, and so 16. So we have a 16 overall zoom tier. Well, that Gallard there had an 18 overall zoom tier. So we just grab the sight scope zoom tier. We add 2 of them. The scope is adding 2 zoom tiers. Now our scope overall tier zoom is 18. Boom. Nice. So now we have a total zoom multiplier of 1.775. So that's basically what happens, right? You're taking the hipfire range here is simply multiplied, identified the hipfire range by using the value per point. And so that's just to get the ADS, you just multiply it 1.775. So that's just this is just being multiplied by this to get that. So fairly simple, much more simple than it was. But this calculator will allow you to do this easily, even if you're using a weapon that has a less. Someone pointed this out, that the pulse rifle cold denial has a less zoom than regular. So you can simply set it down to -3, with 13 is the zoom tier of cold denial. And so this will reduce the total zoom down to what it should be, and so this should give you accurate results for something like cold denial or any other weapon. I forget the other weapon, but there's another one like cold denial, same place you can get it from, and it has a little bit higher zoom. Well, I think we'll get into that later. So range calculator here. If you're on the phone app, if you're on the phone, you can go to the website destinyindepth.com range calculator, and you're likely going to only be able to see one of these, which is good enough. So you can use it to quickly just range stat up and down. 100, 0, probably going to be somewhere in the middle, like 50. That's why it starts at 50 here. If you're a hand cannon, you need to leave the sight scope tier at 0. It needs to be 0. If you're a sidearm, same thing, needs to be 0. If you're using an auto rifle though, and it has a scope, you can change this. If you're using any weapon that has a scope that has zoom tiers, you need to change this to match the zoom tier of the scope. And if the weapon has a odd zoom stat or base zoom, something like an aggressive pulse rifle or a high impact scout rifle, they actually have 1 additional zoom. Those ones actually have 1 additional zoom tier, and you're going to have to add that additional zoom tier in the calculator to make the calculation accurate. In the perk range zoom perks here, you can add a rangefinder or not. So far I only have a rangefinder in as a perk option. It's basically the only one you're really going to need. You can use rangefinder same as Seraph rounds. If you have Seraph rounds, rangefinder will give you the same answer. Although on SMGs, strangely enough, Seraph rounds actually improves the hipfire range. So unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see that identified here for a Seraph round SMG. Back to the calculators. So I have two here side by side for a reason, because if you want to test, I want to see how my hand cannon compares to my auto rifle. Let's say. So let's say I've got an auto rifle, and it's your standard auto rifle, no scope, with maybe a lower range stat like 40, and I've got my hand cannon. I've got a nice range stat on it, like 55, and I managed to get a rangefinder on my hand cannon. The rangefinder I am showing here in total zoom area what effect that is doing, so you can actually see that it will improve the total zoom here by 10%. So you can actually compare that. So this one has a total zoom of 1575 with rangefinder. That actually brings the hand cannon somewhat in line. It's a little bit behind at 1.513 instead of 1.75, but they're actually fairly similar. So now if we compare the two here, you can see that for the minimum range damage fall off start, the hand cannon is doing better. This hand cannon, this auto rifle is fairly low range auto rifle versus a hand cannon that's optimized for range pretty significantly with rangefinder and a decent range stat. So there you go. The hand cannon pretty much beats it out for medium range, so 22.5 meters versus 28.5 meters. The hand cannon is going to be better at this optimal medium range, but see the difference here for max range. Something you have to include is max range. If you're forgetting max range, which a lot of people don't remember to look at max range. Max range for the hand cannon is 20 meters further. 22 meters actually. 22 meters further. So this means the damage fall off, is going to fall off much more slowly. And so although the auto rifle starts its damage fall off sooner, those few meters that is going to be feeling damage fall off, it's going to be very little amounts, very small amounts. Not only that, but it's not included on this, but auto rifles decrease to a floor of 50% damage, where hand cannons decrease to a floor of 30, or 1/3, 33.333, 1/3. So you're going to actually have more, the drop off is going to be much quicker on the hand cannon. Although the start here is much better. 28 meters. If you're fighting within 28 meters, you're going to be doing better. So this is just an example of what you can do with this. You could compare, of course, an auto rifle to an auto rifle, auto rifle to fusion rifle, an auto rifle to just about anything. I have fusion rifles in here as the only special weapon so far. I plan on adding shotguns, possibly submachine guns, sidearms. So if you want to compare a submachine gun to, say, a sidearm, or a submachine gun to another submachine gun, you could do that easily here. So that's the range calculator. For those who have a little more interest in these kind of things, in theory crafting, we also have the value per point down here, so you can actually see how the zoom stat affects the value per point. So this is a 0.5057. So if I put it down to 0, you can see it going up and down there. The ADS. It's kind of hard to fit both on here. We've got 0.057. So you can see it going up and down. That's showing that you're actually getting an increase in value per range point. Every range point. So at 0 zoom stats, you're at 0.4. But if you max your zoom out 0.6, you're actually going to be getting 0.6 meters for every range stat. So you're actually improving the range that you're getting from each range stat. So down here at the bottom, my friend, that one guy, Escape, helped me put this together. He gave me the formulas for this down here. So you can take damage. So let's say I have, let's say I do 40 damage per shot It's just an example. I don't actually, not really in the mood for looking up. So you can put in the damage for a weapon type. You can put in the amount of shots that you do. So we're going to have 40 damage for the body, 60 damage for the headshots. We've got body shots fired, so the amount of body shots you land is 1. And then you land 2 headshots. Lucky you. You're not going to get a kill because unfortunately you only do 160 damage. You're going to have to do a little more damage here. So we're doing 2 body shots and then 2 headshots. That's 200 damage, that's enough for a kill. So you can also adjust your health total. So let's put 192, that's a pretty average health amount. 187 is like if you have 0 resilience, 187. So 192, that's about average. So this is showing that you are going to have an increase. So which weapon is this type? This is a sidearm. This is a sidearm. We're going to put it down to 0 because sidearms cannot get zoom. Let's put it rangefinder and we'll give it a bit of range here, you know, 60 range. Sidearm with 60 range and rangefinder. We have 18.2 meter optimal range. So 2 headshots, 2 body shots. You're going to be able to do that 2 headshots, 2 body shots at 18.2 meters as just this example with the damage that I showed there. So this is an increase to optimal range of 0.56 meters by the damage. Let's say you did, you know, more damage, you know. Let's say you landed another body shot. You're now doing 260 damage, so that's more damage than needed. So at this with 3 headshots and 2 body shots, we're now adding 3.69 meters to our range, essentially. Optimal range of 21.33 meters. So we've taken, by adding damage, we've added a significant amount. So this is, let's say you know, let's say we do headshots, but let's say you get like, you know, you get rampage going, so you get more damage, right? You're doing 80 damage now. You're doing 55 damage to the body now, right? Because you got rampage going. Let's say you're doing the same amount of, you're just going to be doing the same amount of body shots, headshots. You've now added 4 meters, right? So that's how count damage. This allows you to include damage into the formula for your range. I do have explosive here. Unfortunately, in recent testing, I found that explosive payload actually reduces the range. Like, it improves the range by separating the damage. By the explosive damage doesn't take damage fall off. Where, of course, it has, you know, half the damage is explosive, half of it isn't. So the half that's explosive doesn't feel damage fall off. The half that is not explosive, that is kinetic, does feel damage fall off. Unfortunately, there was one caveat, because when I was testing a hand cannon that had explosive rounds, I was actually getting that kinetic damage was actually having worse fall off than other hand cannons that didn't have explosive payload. So you're probably going to have a net improvement in range, but it seems Bungie's you know, knows that you're going to try to benefit from this, and so it seems they may have reduced the range to try to make counter the improvement in range that goes on there. Alright, so that's the range calculator and everything involved. And this website, you can always, I have a few articles here on the website. I may do more in the future when I get around to it. So that's the range calculator. Here is, let's go to the range charts. First one here on the front of the site here. This just gives you a nice little picture of all the weapons in the game. You got the scout rifles here with the most range, way ahead of everything else. Like, they're like leaving everything in the dust here. And this is, you know, you don't have a scope on this. Once you add a scope, you're way out here. You're way out here. You're going off the freaking board if you add a scope on this thing, on a scout. So scouts are way out there. Everything else is kind of fitting back in here now. You've got, of course, next one down here is pulse rifles. going from 30 to 39. You have auto rifles going from 21 to 32. They both are coming down here to a very similar maximum range though, 64 and 67. So the maximum range for them is actually fairly similar. So realistically, you can fairly easily get an auto rifle to have about the same range as a pulse rifle with a little bit of zoom, with a good scope, and you are likely going to be able to bring your auto rifle pretty decently in line with your average pulse rifle. Hand cannons here are right in the middle between the auto rifles, right? If you got auto rifle here, auto rifle starts here, highest is here, so these hand cannons are right here in the middle. The thing is though, 30%, 33%, 1/3. They drop down here to 1/3 damage, and like everything else drops to 50%. These drop to 1/3, not just a half. So they drop hard down, right down to 33%. So within this range here, this is really you're going to be your 24 to 28 is where you're going to want to compete. Outside of 28, auto rifles are going to take you out, pulse rifles are going to take you out. You don't want to be out there. And generally, see, as Cool Guy and other people have said, range stat isn't a huge deal, and that is because you can't adjust this point. This point is fixed. The only thing that changes this 22.4 is rangefinder. Rangefinder is going to take you. We'll run over here to the hand cannons. Rangefinder, 42. Oh my gosh, I've been saying 24 the whole time. 42 to 64. This 42 is basically fixed. It goes to 46 with a rangefinder, but otherwise you're not affecting it. Where an auto rifle has 62 meters of range, of maximum range, and it can put a scope on or a rangefinder to push this out even further, out into like the 70 to 80 range. And then we got over here the SMGs and the sidearms. Similarly to the hand cannons and auto rifles, you have the sidearms fitting in here between the lowest SMGs and the highest SMGs. They fit like the hand cannons right in the middle, with the caveat that they actually benefit from range stat. The range stat actually benefits the max range here. See, as you can see, it's the only one on this chart that isn't coming. They're not both coming to the same point here, both those lines. These one has a bit here, so 27.2, 30 meters if you're improving the range stat. So the highest range sidearm doesn't have as much range as the highest range SMG, but it'll beat out most SMGs. Average to high range sidearms will tend to beat out SMGs, except for the highest range SMGs, especially if they have high zoom scopes or medium zoom scopes. Once you get a scope on there, yeah, you're going to be beating their sidearms. We got fusion rifles here. This is the most in-depth one on the fusion rifle here. This is the fusion rifle base range, so each of them show you, if range stat is 0, this is what you're going to have. Of course, you're likely never going to have a weapon with a 0 range stat, but theoretically, that is what it could be. You have value per point here. Higher value per point is better. Fusion rifles over here with a pretty low value per point. It's actually quite low. I put poor as in here. It's not as bad as sidearms, I think. Yeah, sidearms is worse. Hand cannons is similar. No, hand cannons is decently better. So it's fairly similar to sidearms. It's bad. It's not great. Functionally okay, because at least you get, it's better than nothing. Functionally you want range still. But its effect is pretty sucky. So I have here charts for each of the archetypes. We're starting with the rapid fire here. You've got the The lines are of course damage. Unlike in the all primary section, this is actual damage values, not all just a percentage. In most of these ones, well, all of these except for the fusion rifles, I have them as percentages of the damage. This one is actually the real damage value that they do. So 35, just over 35 damage. And so you can see where it comes off hipfire, ADS, rangefinder, tier 6 scope, tier 6 plus rangefinder. Fusion rifles suffer from the recent nerf to their scope zoom, which means you get 1/5 the effective zoom now. Zoom now only offers 1/5 of its range benefits that it used to on a fusion rifle. I'm assuming that it used to do that. It may have been something else, but compared to a different weapon, it's 1/5. That's why when you're looking at a tier 6 scope, it doesn't even compete with rangefinder. So you're not even getting a 10% increase with a tier 6 scope. So you've got tier 6 scope level zoom, like visual zoom going on, but only rangefinder level range increase. Of course, you can stack those for a greater improvement. Overall, you're going to want range stat, a decent bit of range stat mixed with, if you can stack a tier 6 scope with rangefinder, which is kind of unlikely. I have this list here that's going to show you the weapons that can get different levels here. So basically for rapid fire, you got Prolium. So Prolium is going to be your go-to. It can roll scopes, so you can actually get scopes on it and rangefinder. One of the few weapons that can actually do rangefinder and scopes. Unfortunately, it's rapid fire, which is kind of the worst fusion rifle for aim, which kind of sucks. So we're going to go down here to the bottom, skip past adaptive, skip past precision. You can look at precision here. Precision are lucky here. As you can see, I've got these green, yellow, and orange line. The green line is an OHK with 5 pellets. The yellow is with 6 pellets, and the orange is 7 pellets. So the rapid fire can't even OHK. It can't even one-hit kill with 5 pellets. You need at least 6 pellets to get the kill. Same with adaptive. Adaptive's just below the required amount of damage to kill with 5 pellets. So you're not getting 5 pellet kills with it either. You will be able to get a 5 pellet kill with a precision. That is possible. You're going to be doing that. So skipping past that, high impact frame, which is everybody's favorite, which I had to add an additional line here because this one, the Erentile class high impact frame, can actually OHK with 4 pellets. It is right exactly able to, it has the exact amount of damage to be able to OHK with 4 pellets on, I believe I was using a fairly medium level resilience, 192 damage, which is my favorite preferred. So if you actually have higher resilience, let's say you're in the tier 7, 8, 9 tiers, you probably won't even be able to get OHK'd with 4 pellets from high impact. But, you can do what you want to do. That could be valuable, if you see someone running an Erentile, it might be worth kicking your resilience up to 8 or 9, just so you can make sure you're not getting killed by him with 4 pellets. So we have the final one here. So I have both of them, and then I also have them together. I have a low range and the highest range, lowest range, and then I have them together compared. So of course the highest one here, high range stat with 6 tier plus rangefinder. I don't even know what weapon can do that. I don't even know if that's possible, I'll be honest. I do believe it is possible. Erentile can get a rangefinder, I think. I do believe I double checked it when I put these numbers in. You can tell me if you have an Erentile with rangefinder or not. that puts you out at 20.9 meters. So you're going to be able to 4 pellet kill at 20.9 meters and 5 pellet kill out to 24 meters with an errand tile with maxed out range, tier 6 zoom, and rangefinder. If you can't manage to get all of those, then you're going to be back here with the good friend here, tier 6 scope or tier 6 plus rangefinder, low range. So that really shows you the range doesn't hugely matter, right? So if you can get low range with a tier 6 and rangefinder, you're going to have the same range as someone who doesn't have rangefinder but has a high range stat, right? Although the person with, and you actually be doing better because you're going to have you pushed your maximum range out further than the guy who only got the high range in tier 6, right? So here is high range ADS, high range tier 6. Oh, well actually no. So I guess realistically that tier 6 could also be a rangefinder. It's not like you're stacking both, but you know, tier 6 is about equivalent to rangefinder, so you can get one or the other. So that is the fusion rifles. You can look through them there. So I'm just gonna go through auto rifles. We're not gonna go through all of these because we don't have time for it. But same idea, except we're looking at percentages. We have 100% damage, 50% damage. We have one for the 32 lowest range, 100 highest range, and then the two compared. The green portions is where you have zoom, high rangefinder, tier 6, and tier 6 plus rangefinder. As you can see, an auto rifle, if you can manage to get tier 6 plus rangefinder, you're going to be out at 49.7 meter minimum range and a 97.65 meter maximum range. So you're going to be out at almost 50 meters starting distance, almost 100 meters ending distance. That's a freaking ton of range, man. Like if you compare that to a pulse rifles can do a little better, but like it's not a lot better. It's about, you know, starting is 58, right? So it's not a ton better, but it is. So again, here we have basically some important bullet points here. Lowest range stat, some important bullet points, gives you some weapons that follow under these bullet points, and gives you percentages for like how much the zoom improves it, how much the added range you get from zoom and rangefinder, etc. So I think that's all I'm gonna go over for now. This video feels like it's already super long. Please go through this if you're interested in range, and check out the range calculator. This is what I've been working on the last like month. This is why part of why I haven't been making videos, because I've been racking my brain trying to make sure I've got everything figured out for this. I just finished everything, got the hand cannon bullet points in here this weekend. That's been the insanity that I've been pushing through. I hope you enjoy it. I'll hopefully reference this in videos, given that I do videos. I'm going to do videos. You keep me to my word, guys, here. I'm going to do videos, and I'm going to use the range charts and the range calculator as reference for that. The range calculator honestly is going to really help me out with giving range values. So basically, you know, if I'm reviewing a weapon, you can just punch the range in, boom, you have the range. You don't even have to test it. It's really accurate. You know, I've checked the accuracy of it. It's super damn accurate. Unless I really felt I needed to, you know, if there's a new perk or something, if or a perk like Seraph rounds that, you know, is like, hey, there's something weird going on here, that's when you might need to do testing. But other than that, or opening shot. Opening shot's weird. If you've watched my opening shot video, it's weird. It affects each weapon differently, which is annoying. I'd love to get those numbers sharper, but anyway, tell me what you think about the range charts and the range calculator Tell me how you do using them. That is all for this episode of The Heart of Destiny. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Adios.